This video is going to show us the process for getting our game res into Substance Painter, baking our mesh maps, doing, applying our materials to specific parts of our object, doing some texture storytelling like dirt and blood splatter, and then finally exporting all of those textures for use in Character Creator in the video after this one. Having said all that, we will jump into Substance Painter, and we just exported our high res, so let's go in our high res and our low res. So I'm going to go in here to File, New, and we're going to go in here to Select, and again, we're here in our desktop, our Gear Bake folder. Here's our high res. We don't need that just yet. We're going to go down here to our low, which is considerably smaller. So I'm going to double click the Gear Bake low. The document resolution we'll talk about more in detail, but 2048's a good working resolution. It's nice and performant in Substance Painter. And previously on the body, we did check on use UV tile workflow when we brought the body in, because that was UV tiles. In this case, like we talked about, this is just simple 0 to 1 with material assignments for our texture set list. So we're good to go. We don't need to have that checked on. And that's it. Obviously, you can turn off auto unwrap. We've already unwrapped the UV, so we'll hit OK. I should mention, however you want to UV them is fine too. Max Maya Moto Blender Cinema 4D, whatever you want to use to UV and game res, totally fine. So right now we have all of our objects in here. Well, we have our one game res object basically that behind the scenes or under the hood is all separate objects we're going to bake to namespace wise. And then here is all of our texture sets. So if I drag this window down, here you can see all of the texture sets. If we want to just look at the helmet, we can Control Alt right click the helmet to select that texture set, or you can go in here and choose the texture set. We can hit this eyeball 1 to isolate it, and then turn off eyeball 1 to go back into all of our objects here. So let's bake our objects. So we're going to go down here to our texture set settings tab. We're going to scroll down. Again, our size right here is just telling us our viewport resolution that we're working at. However, when we go in here to our mesh maps and say bake mesh maps, you're going to see the output size right here is set to 2048. And then we have a texture set working resolution size over here. And again, game reses can be complicated. I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible without getting too deep into that type of talk. But essentially what we're going to do is, right now everything's set to 2048. So if I went through and said, hey, everything that's checked on, bake it out at 2048. And that's totally fine. If that's cool with what you're working on, then you're good to go. However, for some of the stuff like the armor, we'll go ahead and I can switch the working texture resolution to 1024. The axe, I'll leave at 2048. Let's see, the boots, I'll drop down to 1024. Gloves, I'll drop down to 1024. Essentially, stuff like the water pouch, if I go through here and turn off this eyeball, you'll see, I'll zoom in here on this little preview window for my baking map. This water pouch is its own object. Now, you may be asking, well, why don't you just make it part of the pants? So in Character Creator, what we're going to end up doing is having the ability to save off components of this object into its own file. So if I ever want to go through and make variants of these goblins, make an entire goblin army, and I want to reuse the pants and reuse the shirt for multiple of them, or make a completely different character and apply these pants to that character, I can do that. In the case of this water pouch, I might want that as just an accessory. Maybe I want to have 3 water pouches on a single character. This will allow me to have this as a separate file in Character Creator that I can drag on and apply and move around to different portions of the character if I want to. So when I'm talking about breaking up my game res character, I have it broken up in namespace so I can get clean normal map bakes. I also have it broken up into different parts that I might want to reuse on another character. For this example, the axe, I'm going to save this as an accessory so any character I create from now on can use this axe. Same thing with the backpack, same thing with the boots. I can use these across multiple characters. So in this instance, a 2048 for just this little pouch is a little overkill. I can get plenty of texture resolution by having this at 1024. On the flip side, if I'm going to do a lot of cinematic renders, or really up close renders of that helmet that isn't separated out, and I want to give it a little more texture resolution to hold up, I can switch this to 4096. Now, to be very clear, I'm only using this as a guide to how I want to split these up when I go to bake. Because if I change these right now, these are, again, just our working resolutions in Substance Painter. You can paint scratches that are 2048 or 1024 and 4096. It'll apply it and you can preview it in your viewport. And not to confuse things, but even if your working resolution is 2048 and later on, right before your export, you're like, you know what? All those brush strokes I made, I want to export those as 4096. You can totally do that too later on. But what I'm using this for right now is an organizational tool to go through and change my common output size setting. So for example, let's go back up here to the top. The arm armor, the boots, the gloves, let's keep scrolling down. The helmet cloth doesn't need to be that big. We'll just say it's 1024. Loincloth can be 1024. Pants and shirt, I'll leave at 2048. Shoulder pad, I'll leave, and then water pouch. So all of these small objects, I'm going to put at 1024. My large objects and or special objects, I'll put at 4096, and then everything else I'll keep at 2048. Now, this, again, is just organizational for us. It's not going to tell Substance Painter to bake those out. Right now, it is set up to say, hey, all of these are checked on. It will bake out all of those at 2048. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and turn off everything except for my 1024 file. So we'll just start with that. So again, make sure all of my 1024 options are checked on, and we're going to turn off our 2048 and our 4096s. So now just our 1024s are checked on. I'm going to change this mesh map setting output size to 1024. This is going to bake a 1024 ambient occlusion, normal, curvature map, etc., thickness map. All of those maps right here that are checked on, it's going to bake those at 1024 for these checked on items. So there is a few things we need to change. Number one, we're going to go in here and plug in our high res. So here's our Gearbake High FBX. Load that up. And you're going to see you're going to have a cage file on here. It's the max frontal distance and max rear distance. It's a visual representation of that. So if for some reason, let's say your max frontal distance is in here and you're seeing a lot of red poke through this blue, that's going to give you a normal map error. It's going to kind of be a flat normal, right, where those red parts are showing through. All you need to do is go in here to max frontal distance and just crank that up until all of that red disappears. I mean, you can just leave this at the default 0.01 and it'll probably be fine, but that's just what you can change there. Another thing we need to change, again, we're in common settings right here. We're going to scroll down. We're going to say match. Instead of always, we'll say by mesh name. This will allow us to bake, again, if I go down here to matching by name tab down here, and this will give you an error too. It'll pop in. You can even filter it down to unmatched ones, but it'll give you a little warning sign in here. If you had a name in here that was like loincloths low and then loincloth high, it would be like, hey, these names aren't the same. Go back to your source and change it, re-import it. If you do need to do that and it's on the low res, well, if it's on the high res, you can just select the high res, hit this little minus sign, bring back in your high res. If you do make a change to your low res, you can go in here to edit project configuration, reselect your file, and then just bring that back in if you want to. And that you could even do that after you've already textured your object and you want to change your UVs around. Again, that's a different way. You can go in here again to edit, edit project configuration, select your updated low res with your new UVs, and it will go through, change your UVs, reapply your brush strokes, make sure everything's all set up and correct. So just a really flexible system. I love it. So again, in our common settings, we've switched it to match by mesh name, so we get nice, clean, normal bakes. And then in our ID map, this is another important one, change it from color source material color to vertex color. In ZBrush poly paint, you paint on the verts. That's actually vertex color. When we export our high-res FBX, all of that poly paint vertex color information is going to be baked to our ID map, and we can use that for easy mask selection. And I think that's it. So back here, again, we're just baking out our 1024 objects. Oh, and I should also mention ambient occlusion. I'm going to leave this to self-occlusion always because we do want nice clean bakes for our normal map, so we're not baking things together. But for ambient occlusion, if the things are close to each other, I do want to go ahead and have the ambient occlusion be around objects that are on each other and next to each other. So we'll keep that as always. So back here, again, I think we're good to go. All of our names are correct. So I'm going to say bake selected textures for our 1024s. And just like we did for the 1024, we're going to change this to 2048, and then we're going to go through here and select just our 2048 objects and turn off our 1024 objects and keep our 4096 object turned off. So again, output size 2048, only 2048 objects selected. Go ahead here and say bake selected textures. And we just have one last one. That's our helmet at 4096. So turn everything off except for the helmet and switch your output size to 4096. Say bake selected textures, and then all of your textures have been baked at the source size that you would like, and then we'll go back through and start texturing this. Of course, this isn't a texturing course. I'm going to take you very quickly through some of the real basics. And again, I'll have a link in the description if you want to learn how to use the curved stitches in Substance Painter, since it's very nice. So here we are all baked. I'm going to say return to painting mode. Everything is nicely baked out to our object. There's no baking errors. If we go in here and look, all of these are really nice and clean. All of our normal maps are really clean. All of our ambient occlusion maps, however, around the buttons in here, even though those are separate objects, they still have a nice ambient occlusion around them. So everything's looking really good. And again, our material assignments here are our texture sets. So if I want to start texturing something, I can Control-Alt, right-click, for example, the helmet. We can go through here, Control-Alt, right-click the helmet, or just go in here and select that texture set. Go in here to layers. You can go through here. It starts out with just materials, so I can just drag on search for metal. There we go. So just grab one of these iron raw, for example. We can drag this over, and that'll texture my object as iron raw. I can right-click this, and I can say add mask with color selection, and then with color selection selected, say pick color, and choose this. And now just that object that we have our material ID assigned to will be textured as iron raw. So again, just the basics setup. Here's smart materials in here and all sorts of cool stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a file that's already done. So this file has already been textured. We'll start out with the helmet because I think that's actually where I started. Usually what I'll do is I'll take an object that has most of the materials on it that I'm going to end up using. I'll texture that all up, and then I'll save that as a smart material that I will drag and drop and reapply to my other objects. And there's ways to instantiate materials as well, which we'll talk about briefly. So for example, I'm on the helmet here. I'm going to Control-Alt, right-click the helmet. And if I just want to look at the helmet, I can go up here to this little one icon eyeball, and that'll just narrow it down to just my objects that are selected, which in this case is my helmet. You're going to see our working resolution is 4096. If I go in here to texture setting, we're working at 4096. Here's something you can do though. If you want to, you can, if it's more performant, turn this down to 2048 while you're working, and then you can always pump this back up. And I'll talk more about this on the texture export settings. You can even work at 2048 as long as you want, and you never even have to look at your 4096 textures. As long as you go on your export and say, hey, export my 4096s, you should be good to go. So again, if you want to work a little more performantly, keep this at 2048. It'll be good enough, and then you can always turn on 4096 at the last minute, or again, just on export. So let's go into our layers here. I'm going to turn everything off. So I'll usually start with a base material that's just dark and rough, and it just is kind of a catch-all. So if I don't texture something, at least it has a foundation of something that's not going to be particularly noticeable. If you want to do the opposite though, I can go through here, and you see it's just a fill layer. So one of these fill layers is just a material. Here's all the material settings for this object. If I go through here and say choose a hot pink, or choose a color that's not going to be used in your object, that will be a really obvious indication that as you're texturing through, you've missed something and you need to go back and texture it. But like I said, I'll usually keep this pretty innocuous and just say I have a base layer sitting at the bottom. On top of here, we have a worn leather chest. I probably grabbed this from if you click on this button right here, browse 3D assets in marketplace, this will pull up a creative cloud option in here. So if you want to go through, and there's tons of leathers in here you can choose from, tons of metals, painted materials in here. If you want to use any of these, you can just download it, or you can go in here and say send to. We're working in Substance 3D Painter. You can say send to 3D Painter. It'll go ahead and download and package that up for us. There we go. It's sent it on over. you can see we now have a base material with painted flaked textures on here. So if I drag this over onto our object, now we have painted material in here with this fill material. We can go up here and we can change our tiling. We can tile that painted flake up more or less. Again, we can right click this and assign it, add mask with color selection, pick here, and now just that painted material is assigned to wherever we want. Anyway, basics. We'll go ahead and delete that out of our scene. We'll turn on our worn leather chest, and this isn't assigned to anything in particular. Again, it's just kind of a base layer sitting on top of everything. So in reality, I could probably delete this base layer and no one would know the difference. On top of here, we have some more leather breakup. Here we have the fabric. So this is, it was red fabric originally when I created this. I changed it to green just to differentiate it. And on top of this, I have a duplicate of this object here that's a little bit lighter and a little rougher. And in fact, so this fabric here has a color selection. So if I go in here and pick color, again, I can assign it to different areas of the helmet that I want. If I don't, I can just click these little minus signs and get rid of it. On this light fabric here, instead of doing a color selection, I just have a paint layer. So you just right click this mask and say add paint, and that'll add a paint layer. And on this paint layer, you're gonna see I can go through and I can mask in where I want this. I can also hold down Alt and tap here, and you can see, oops, I must have overshot some of my brush strokes here. So if I hit M on my keyboard or go up here and say select material, I can go through here and paint out any of those changes that I made. So again, it's just kind of a sun bleached version of this fabric on top. And then up here, again, we have black leather straps, black leather straps 02, some leather breakup. Again, that doesn't appear to be on anything. If I don't need that, I can just dump it out of my scene file here. Here is where we have blanket stitches. I'm gonna put a link in the description so you can see how these stitches are applied. And again, I don't need to do this in ZBrush. I can just go through here and have stitches put on after the fact just for my texture. Very non-destructive, works really well. We're gonna go in here, we'll turn on axe blade, metal here, stained steel applied, just a rusty dark metal applied to different areas that have been changed, bronze armor applied to different parts of the thing. If I choose, for example, the red rope fill, I just change the color from red to green. That one's easy enough to change. And then on this color breakup here, this is where I go through and just kind of break up the color on the metal and on the ropes. Sometimes I'll do a different color breakup depending on the object type, but on this color breakup, it's not a fill layer. So again, a fill layer is just a layer that's going to have material properties that you can change and then mask where it goes. With these layers right here, it's just a layer. You can add these to your scenes. For example, color breakup will add another layer, and then on here you can just paint with a brush. And you can paint with multiple properties too. If I right click in here and I scroll all the way down, you'll see I have different channels I can turn on for this layer. So if I just want to paint with color, I'll turn off metal, roughness, normal, and height. I'll choose a color, and now on top of everything, I can just paint. Here's red color, and you can see as I'm painting across the different material properties, when I'm painting in the metal, it's turning to metallic color. As I'm painting on the rope, it's changing to, a fabric red color, because I'm not painting any other properties, I'm just painting color. Now, if I do go through here and turn on everything, and now I'm painting a base color that has 0 metallic, as I paint on this layer, now it's going to overwrite the metallic of the object and any other material properties. And in fact, if I go through here, like material, you can choose, here's just the base color, here's just the roughness, here's just the metallic. You can see what you're doing in every channel, and you can hit M on your keyboard or go up here to material and turn all that back on. So that's a layer, paintable layer, basically. We'll go ahead and delete that out of our scene. So again, just a little bit of color breakup here. The roughness breakup, again, if you want to see that roughness, you can go through here, and here's the roughness of my object, and then I just did a little, it's a fill layer with a grunge plate put in here. So if I go over here to these alphas and say, the textures, and type in grunge, here's a bunch of grunge textures, just an easy way to kind of break up a surface. And with this fill layer selected, if I scroll down, you're going to see I don't have color, metal, normal, or height turned on, just roughness is turned on. So this fill layer just has roughness information. And in fact, if I change this down to roughness, it's automatically set to overlay. I can dial up 100% of that roughness breakup, or I can just kind of put in just a little bit of roughness breakup from this grunge material onto my object. Again, do whatever feels right for you. Here's dirt. So here's a dirt material light. Here's a dirt material dark. For the dirt material, I just have it on a paint layer. So if I alt tap the mask, you can see as I'm using this paint layer and updating it, I can paint out with a black color. I can tap X on my keyboard to select white. I can go through here and paint dirt that way. I can also go in here, let's X out of that grunge search. We'll go back to our brush. I'll choose a, say, Dirt 2 brush, and I'll hold down Control and right click to make that smaller. So with our dirt brush selected, I can go through here and just paint dirt on. Of course, I probably want to hit M on my keyboard, so while I'm painting in dirt, I can see it update. Now, instead of painting in dirt, which is what I've done here, you can right click a mask and say add a generator. So with that generator selected, you can go in here and choose like a dirt generator. And that'll go through, if I scroll down, you'll see world space, normal, and position, and curvature, and ambient occlusion. It's using all of these maps. If I alt tap this mask here where it's creating it, it's using all of these maps, and I'll scroll back up and do a dirt level. So with a very low dirt level, it's putting the dirt in all the recessed areas where your ambient occlusion collects, and your curvature map has deep areas as opposed to edge areas. So I can use this to dial in like kind of a automatic dirt level generator. If I hit M on my keyboard, you can see this dirt kind of being layered over time based on the amount of dirt level I have. And there's more options in here, so you can crank up the grunge amount or make the grunge amount less, and grunge scale and micro details, all sorts of things you can use in order to fine tune this grunge thing. And then on top of this, you can go through and clean this up with another paint layer. So if you like this as a base, and then you want to tap X on your keyboard, and then you want to go through here and like maybe paint out some of the generator dirt, you can just add a paint layer on top of it and go through and clean that up. Again, I just opted for having just a paint layer to paint in dirt where I needed it, but I'll leave that up to you. Of course, here we have blood splatter on here and another paint layer. If I want to, for example, I'll choose my brush here, and we'll choose a basic hard brush. So we can, again, if we want to tap X on our keyboard, I can literally just paint in this blood material onto my object. Of course, I can also go in here to my alphas and do a search for paint, and we'll do a big old handprint. So I'm going to hold down Control and right click to make this hand bigger, and then Control and left click to change the angle. And then again with the blood, let's switch back to base color here. With this blood material selected and we're painting in the alpha, we can just kind of tap on here, and that'll go ahead and put a big old bloody handprint. And if we ever decide, you know what, I need to make a change to that bloody handprint material, no problem. Just go select that material. We can go through here. We can make it, a little redder, maybe make it a little metallic if we want, and go through here roughness. We can make it a little shinier, so it's a little fresher blood splatter print. So that way we can go through here again. I don't know if these come with painter or not, but there's some splatter in here as well. We'll just go back to the paint here, and we'll swap out our alpha. So now we'll have a little bit of blood splatter. And again, if you want to hold down Alt, you can see exactly what we're painting in. We'll put a little splatter back here, and then M to go back to our material. So here's some blood splatter from that. And then oil, this fill layer again just has roughness turned on. I'll go through, and it's kind of a low roughness, and I'll just go through and kind of paint where oily fingers might be on something, or in machinery where you might oil an area, put oil in an area so that it's more lubricated, and then just do a little bit of texture visual storytelling. This last one here is color adjust. So I'm going to go ahead and turn everything back on. We'll say show all. And this one's interesting. This is a way to instantiate a material. So for instance, what I could do, and we talked about this creating a smart material for our goblin body in one of the previous videos, I could shift select all of these, hit Control F and put all of these into a folder, or sorry, Control G in this program to put all of this into a folder. I can name this folder Goblin Gear. And again, we're just on the helmet material. This is all we're working on. If I go in here and I say create a smart material, that will save all of these layers, all of these settings that you've dialed in here into its own smart material. You can go through here and you could type in Goblin, and your smart material from Goblin Gear will show up here, and then you can drag this onto your pants, onto your backpack, onto your boots, and you could use this as a starting point to have all of your materials set up, all of your settings set up, and then you can just go in and change it based on the object that you're working on. Another thing you can do is you can instantiate. And so one example of this, if I turn everything back on, is this color adjust. So with this color adjust turned on, I have this fill layer set to pass through, and then under this I have a right click, add filter, and then you just go through here and choose HSV, a hue saturation value shift, and you set this to pass through as well. So what I can do with this HSL perspective is I can go through here and I can change the hue, the saturation, and lightness for all of those layers for the helmet. And in fact, not just for the helmet. If you right click this color adjust that we made and say instantiate across texture sets, this will put a instance of this color adjust into all the texture sets that you select. And in this case, I put it on all of them. So it's global. So if I was to go in here to helmet cloth, for example, you'll see I got a bunch of layers that make up this helmet cloth over here, and it's got a color adjustment. I can't make any adjustments on this layer though. And you may wonder, like, well, how do I know where to find it? Go over here to this little double icon and scroll up, and you'll see the main one that they're all pulling from is helmet. So go ahead and select that. That'll select your helmet color adjust instance, not the instance, but the actual helmet color adjust. Here it is selected, so that now if I go through here and I say, hey, I want to pull all these to a different color, I can go through here and change the hue on all of these, and we'll go ahead and set this back to 0.5. I can change the saturation if I want to desaturate everything. Here we just made everything in our scene black and white, or we can over crank the saturation here, make it more cartoony, a little more, I don't know, Ninja Turtle-y. So again, you can go through here and instantiate a layer. And if I was smarter, I probably would have instantiated, you know, the metal materials that are the same, the cloth materials I could have instantiated. So if I change one cloth material, it'll go through and change all my cloth materials. It's kind of up to you, but that's just a way to instantiate. And in this case, do a color adjust that does a pass through, so that not only does it adjust the colors for the entire layer stack for that object, it's instantiated, so you can do it across every object and all of its layers all at once. So again, we'll just dial in some saturation here. And that is the basic texturing setup for our entire object. Now there's just one step left that we need to do, and that's export our textures. So again, here's all of our texture sets set up. Just to keep things easy, I went through all of these. I mean, I kept from when we went through and baked, I kept all these at 1024. That's under the texture set settings here. Our working size, 1024, 2048, 4096. Even the shoulder pads at 4096. I can probably drop that down to 2048. It's fine. So basically, you can go through and set these up to whatever texture set size, working size you want, so that when we go in here to File, Export Textures, you'll see I want to export all of these with their appropriate textures. So they're all checked on. I don't need to have any checked off. And under global settings, I have it set to based on each texture set size. So, or you could say, hey, I don't care about that. I want to export everything as a 2048. That's where you would go and choose this. I'm going to keep it based on each texture set size, however. We need to tell it where to go. So I'm going to go in here to Desktop Gear Textures folder. Go ahead and select that folder. The file type, I'm going to put it PNG. You can choose Targa or JPEG, whatever you want. If you did want to, again, have the working resolution at 2048 or whatever, and then you can go in here after the fact on helmet, for example, you could go in here and switch that size out to, oh, I didn't even realize it. I left the helmet at 2048. That was our working size, but we did bake at 4096, and I do want to export that at 4096. I can go in here to edit, and I can say, hey, bake that out at 4096, please. And then that'll go ahead and bake it out as 4096. It'll put a little star right there to let you know that it has an override setting. So one other really important thing we need to talk about, our output template from the body, we went through and chose character creator preset. If you want to see these output templates, you can go, it says this is just an output template. Again, we installed that for the body, and then we can go and look at it here. So here's the character creator template all set up. I'm not going to use that for this. I'm using just basic PBR metal roughness export for the gear. So the body is different. That's the body workflow, the UDIM body workflow for character creator. For these assets, I'm going to switch this out to an output template that is just PBR metallic roughness. Now, I did go a little fancier than this, and I think I made this. So PBR metallic roughness is one option. So you can go here to output templates, and there is a PBR metallic roughness in here. So what I did was I basically right-clicked this, say duplicate, and then I renamed it PBR metallic roughness AO. And the only difference is that there's an underscore height in here. I switched that height out for an AO map. So when I made this PBR metallic roughness from a duplicate, I went ahead and kept all of the conventions that the PBR metallic roughness had, which is if you go through here, you can choose, hey, give me the mesh name underscore the texture set name underscore whatever you want. You can just click this little $sign here. It'll fill in this information basically. So I kept all of that, but for the height, I just said mesh texture set underscore AO. And then instead of adding in the height layer, which would be probably this input maps height over here, I'm doing converted maps mixed AO onto this gray channel here. If you wanted to, I could say, hey, you know what, clear this channel out. So here's my gray channel. I'm going to say mixed AO onto this gray channel. And now when it exports, it will give me an ambient occlusion map based on all the texturing that I've done. It'll just export that as an AO map. So if I'm good with that, I'm going to go back to settings here. We'll choose PBR metallic roughness AO. And we chose our folder. We have everything checked on. We've chosen our texture size based on texture set size, except for helmet, which we're bumping up to 4096. And then we'll go ahead and say export. And it went ahead and exported everything. I'm going to go ahead and say save settings so that it saves that with the file. Then I go up here to file, save my scene. And if I go to that gear textures folder, here's all of my base color, metallic, normal, roughness material or textures that I'm going to be bringing into Character Creator. As we bring in these accessories, as we bring in these cloth assets, we're going to set up their material so it looks just like it does in here. It looks that way in Character Creator. In the next video, we'll bring our game res into Character Creator, skin our clothing, parent our accessories, apply our painter textures to our materials, set up dynamic cloth simulation, and save our assets to a custom library.